Luke 11, Pinky Promise. I woke up feeling refreshed as if I had slept for so long that I hadn't felt in a while. I moved to the left. I squinted my eyes at the sunlight through the translucent curtains. What day is it today? Should I go to the university today? It seems I have two classes and I'll try to ask who her ex is. Wait a minute. I already knew that Mai's ex was a guy named Hart. I jumped up and sat down. My heart was beating so fast that it almost came out of my chest. I slowly turned around to look at the floor beside the bed. In the area that was empty before, now, there was a figure of a person wrapped in a blanket, breathing in and out regularly as if he was asleep. I pulled the blanket off myself, then got out of the bed and slowly stepped closer to the body that was sleeping soundly. Is it him? It is, right? It must be, right? Did I succeed? Did I really make it back to CP-10? I knelt beside that body, then reached out and grabbed the end of the blanket to see. Before opening the blanket, the body twitched and sat up. He put his hand on his chest and shouted out. I looked at the person in front of me in shock that suddenly he was startled. The second shock was that the person in front of me now was a person named Dr. Tin in a state of breath. Tin turned to look at me with his pale face and sweating. He took a deep and quick breath as if he had just encountered something shocking. I had a nightmare. I looked at Pitin quietly. Many feelings came in at the same time that the expression is not right. I will be shocked, happy, angry, or want to cry, which caused me to stare at Pitin just like that. Pitin also remained silent, as if trying to understand something. He frowned and opened his mouth slightly before saying, Isn't that a dream? I shook my head slightly, holding my fist tight. I don't know why my tears were flowing uncontrollably. Ethan looked at me in shock. No. I raised my hand to wipe my tears. Why did you die? Ethan raised his hand to his chest. I died? How did you come back? I don't want to say anything more because it won't make any sense. I looked down on my lap. I think I'm happy, so why am I crying? I reached out to Pitin's arm. It was much warmer than when Pitin was stabbed. It's something that tells me that Pitin is still alive. Pitin is back. By the time I came to my senses, the owner of that arm drew me to hug tightly. I was stunned for a moment before snuggling my face on Pitin's broad shoulders. Pitin raised his hand and gently rubbed on my head. Did you come back to save me? I nodded, raised my hand to hug him, and said, How did you go through this thing again and again? Pitin laughed a little and said, I know, right? I didn't know it either, probably because I have both hope and love for you. Lame, I said in a muffled voice as my face was still snuggled on his shoulder. You made a wish just like I did? Pitin's eyes widened after I told him what happened in the previous loop. You mean until we both get married? I nodded with nothing to lose. I saw that you asked for this and it worked, so I did. People there said that not everyone who asked would get it, so I copied you. Oh my god. Ethan laughed miserably. He opened the bottle of water and poured it into my glass. Then, no matter how hard you try to escape, you cannot. I sighed. There was no choice. After I finished speaking, I turned to look at people walking through the glass window. Now, Pitin and I are eating lunch together at a Korean restaurant in a department store. Pitin wants to know everything before he goes to work at 4 o'clock in the afternoon. So, what were you thinking then? Pitin asked me with an enthusiastic expression. Why did you want to help me? Why did you decide to do that? Well, it hurts, I replied softly. It hurts that I am the cause of your death. No one causes a death. Don't think too much. Ethan smiled lightly. Right now, I don't feel any pain. Being stabbed with a knife was like a dream. You don't have to blame yourself anymore. The dead don't feel anything, but the one who suffers is a living person. I looked down and played with my chopsticks. True. Katie nodded in agreement. When you die, you feel nothing. The person who feels is me. Do you know how I feel now? Yes, I replied shortly. I glanced up and looked at Tin. To be honest, every time I see this person's face, my heart will always swells. I'm glad he was still able to sit and smile in front of me like this, instead of the smile from a photo at the funeral. So, Ethan said while leaning back against the back of the chair and crossing his arms in a relaxed position. When should we get married? By hearing that, I could not help but be stunned. Never. What? Ethan's shoulder dropped. At this point, you can't say no anymore. We both had made an oath. How can we? This freaking country we live in is not allowed. Ethan sighed. I think that is enough to hold just a ceremony. And the other thing, I muttered, don't you think you skipped too many steps? Ethan immediately stood up, which made me look at him in shock. Ethan walked to sit beside me. I slightly moved. Ethan extended his face closer. Which step did I skip? Don't diss me. I pushed his face away. Ethan let out a voice. I want to know what you're thinking. Ethan put his arm around my shoulder and held it tight. Tall means we should start with being boyfriends first, right? I was stunned for a moment. Many things were battling in my head. If I accept this person in front of my face to be my boyfriend, the real me that I thought only liked women would change. I believe the two of us can learn about each other very well. Ethan extended his pinky finger to me. So, let's be boyfriend. I could feel the heat rising all over my face. What is this finger? So old fashioned. At this point, I have to ask myself how I feel about Pitin to make it clear. I know that he and I have only known each other for a few days, but if I count the loops that have been overlapping many times in my dreams, I think we have known each other for a long time. The sight of him trying tirelessly to approach me and save my life was beyond impressive. It's a good feeling and meaningful, and even clearer when suddenly Eden disappeared right in front of my eyes. My hands moved without realizing, lifted up slowly, and made a pinky promise to Pitin. I was shocked at myself as well for doing that, but since my body has already moved, it must have been a good decision for me. Pitin smiled happily. He hugged me tightly without caring about the other people in the shop who were staring. I hit his back one big time. Let me go. Ouch! I'm so happy. I'm glad I died at that time. Pitin laughed. I love you so much. I promise to be a good boyfriend. Shameful, I said. I don't know whether to be angry or embarrassed. Let me go now. Then Pitin agreed to back off a little bit. I sighed with relief from the overwhelming feeling in my chest. I turned to look at Pitin, who was smiling widely next to me. Are you that are you happy that much? I pinched Pitin's thigh hardly, which made him startled. Go back to your seat. I pointed to the chair across from me. Yes, sir. Pitin hurriedly got up and went back to his seat. You're like my cat. I raised my eyebrows. How? Like to act cold, threatening, make me hurt sometimes, but actually, Pitin paused for a second. Really love me. I pulled a few tissue papers and threw them at Pitin's face. So into yourself. I secretly smiled and laughed at Pitin's attitude. He's so bugging, always playing lame jokes and bad jokes. I rethink whether it's right to come back and help him. I looked at Pitin's smiling face. It felt better for this person to be alive Then knowing that he was actually dead. Well, yeah, though he likes to act like he can't do things sometimes, he is the only person who makes me feel this way. It was a warm feeling in my heart, the feeling of wanting to be with Beaton indefinitely. I've never seen a man as approachable as him before, and the fear that if I lost him again, I wouldn't be able to live. Is this what you call love? As I have never experienced it with anyone before, I'm not really sure about it. But what I'm sure of is that it was too late to ask this question because I had already agreed to a date with the person in front of me. Nitin put his hand to his chest as if he was very impressed. You smiled. Can I take a photo? I've never seen you smile before. My smile instantly faded. No. Okay, I'll just find a way to make you smile once more. After he finished speaking, the food was served on the table. Eat a lot so that you have energy for your afternoon classes. Okay. I simply answered and put the fried chicken with the sauce on my plate, trying not to make eye contact with the person in front of me. But I couldn't help but glance up to see his expression, who was sitting with his chin on his hand and looking at me with a miserable smile. Continue to eat, Mr. Boyfriend, Ethan said in a normal tone, which made me feel goosebumps all over my body. How many times do I have to be called this until I get used to it? End of loop 11. Pinky promise.